don't think we need to be behind the podiums.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone.
Hey, good afternoon. I'm Doug Burgum, Secretary of Interior. Of course, you all know Chris Wright, our fantastic Secretary of Energy. We're going to kick it off, each of us, with a few opening remarks, and then we're pleased to take your questions. But beginning, just say on behalf of the United States of America, we're pleased to have all of you here today. You all play an important role in getting information out, and of course, Chris and I are here to carry a message about U.S. energy policy, and so we appreciate your presence here today. Thank you very much. To just kick things off, I want to say again, we can summarize the U.S. energy policy in a couple of words. Those two words are peace and prosperity. Prosperity because if we've got affordable, reliable energy all around the world, that is the thing that lifts up humanity. It's the thing that helps economies prosper, because energy is a component in it's not just one industry, it's the foundation for pricing in all industries together. So when we've got affordable, reliable energy around the world, that lifts everybody up. If we want to sell energy, the second part related to peace, if you're going to put that in one sentence, it's sell energy to our friends and allies so they don't have to buy it from our adversaries. Who's an adversary? Adversaries are people that are fighting wars against us or our allies, people that are conducting cyber wars against us or our allies, whether it's misinformation or attacks on infrastructure. And of course, lastly, and almost most importantly, as importantly as the wars, is funding terrorism. And so we know that right now in the two most active conflict areas in the world, both terrorism and in the war between Russia and Ukraine, being funded by energy sales. So if we can displace the revenues from that by selling to our friends and allies, or our friends and allies all selling to each other, because through innovation we lift up the abundance of energy in the world, then the world benefits. So that's the core strategy. What I also want to say, again, as part of that, is the word innovation, because we believe that innovation, not regulation, is the path forward. There's been a lot of ideology around energy that's climbed in from a climate ideology, but when you start creating a bunch of regulations that stop innovation, that restrict new forms of energy, new approaches, or even in some cases regulation that's just banning entire categories of fuels and energy sources that are so important to the world today and will continue to be important. And all you're doing is crushing innovation, but you're raising prices, and raising prices making unaffordable. And we're entering into a new demand cycle like we've never seen before, because one of the other principles of the U.S. energy policy is to win the AI arms race, and we can only win that when we've got affordable, reliable energy. And all of the capital investment, the massive amounts, the trillions of dollars of investment is going to flow to places that have low energy and low electricity prices. Never before in human history have we been able to turn a kilowatt hour of electricity into an intelligence. So this is now the highest form of use of electricity in human history. So with that, again, an imperative. So it's not about an energy transition, it's about energy addition. We need more reliable, affordable energy. That's the strategy. And of course, Chris Wright and I are teaming up together. The president created the National Energy Dominance Council. He asked Chris and I to provide the leadership, executive leadership to that organization, and we'll talk more about that in your questions, but that is the enabling function out of the White House as a whole of government approach, which encapsulates almost half the cabinet that reports to the president are on task to help drive energy abundance around the world. And this conference has been amazing because we've got deals that are being signed, partnerships that are being formed, and fantastic opportunity ahead for the collaboration and partnerships that are being built here, particularly around the importance of this conference of LNG. Chris?
Yeah, I'll just say a few other things. Yeah, we're here two primary reasons. One is we're thrilled with the trade deal the European Union, the United States recently signed. Our goal is to get more trade across the countries, more investment across the countries, more progress, and work together to bring prosperity in our home countries and peace abroad, as Secretary Burgum just said. Part of that trade deal is a commitment from the European Union to buy more American energy. I think that's a win for America. I think that's a win for Europe. We want to fill that hole as Europe closes itself off from Russian energy. We want to fill that with American energy. That the last 20 years, and particularly the previous Trump administration the last year, we are massively focused on growing America's energy production. The more energy we produce, it pushes prices down. That brings affordability and industries coming to the United States, and we want to export as much as we can so we can help drive down energy prices among our allies, like here in the European Union as well. And we're here at Gastech because the fastest growing source of energy on the planet by a fair margin since the financial crisis over the last 15 years is natural gas. The world went from 500 exajoules of energy consumption to 600 exajoules. Over 35% of that came from growth in natural gas. Curiously, the second fastest growing source of energy over the last 15 years was coal, and the third fastest was oil. And all of them are growing twice as fast as wind and solar combined. So we're for energy, any energy that's affordable, reliable, and secure. But we've seen a lot of money. In fact, the biggest investment in any energy source in the world in the last 10 years has been in wind, solar, and batteries. But together, they don't quite make up 3% of global energy. So a lot of money at the end of the day has produced a relatively small amount of energy. Solar has a future, and we want to see where that goes. But in the United States, we've decided enough is enough. 33 years of subsidizing wind and solar. We're going to stop that and let them compete as energy technologies in a marketplace. We want a stronger, more prosperous United States. We want a stronger, more prosperous European Union, and we want closer ties. And with that, we'll open it up for questions.
Thank you. We're going to bring microphones over. We'll start with the gentleman with the glasses and the navy shirt. Please state your name and outlet as well.
Thank you very much. Malcolm Moore from the Financial Times. Do you have any current plans to halt any more U.S. offshore wind projects? And how can investors have confidence in the U.S. When their projects are being stopped?
Well, I'll take the first cut at that, but I'd say it's very clear with the passing of what was been known in the United States as the One Big Beautiful Bill that there was a new laws passed that said we're ending the era of the mass subsidies of offshore wind. Many of those projects weren't really about electricity, they were about tax subsidies. 60 to 70% of the project value was often in the tax subsidies, which didn't even go to the power companies. They were traded off to other hedge funds or other companies that would move those taxes to profitable industries. We've also got a rising amount of actual resistance for sometimes, which might say surprising, from surprising coalitions. But in the United States, we're hearing, Chris and I and all the cabinet, from the marine fisheries groups, from the people that literally about we're going to save the whales. The Department of Defense has got concerns about interference with radar, as does the FFA. A lot of these offshore wind projects were moved through in a very fast, yes, they were permitted, but they got moved through a very fast, ideologically driven permitting process. We've been asked, as part of an executive order from the president, to take a whole of government approach to review those, and reviewing each and every of those. I think the fact that the subsidies have been either cut back or limited means that it's likely that there will not be future offshore wind built in America. We've got we over-rotated to the intermittent sources. That's destabilizing our grid. Chris talked about the worldwide numbers, but just take the PGM grid, which goes from, think of Pentagon to Wall Street, from Washington, D.C. to New York. 60 million people live in that area. During the peak winter day this last winter and the peak hot day this summer, on the moments when we needed the electricity the most, 2% was coming from wind and solar. 70% from fossil fuels, 22% from nuclear, 6% from other, including hydro. But this is and yet what was the thing in that area? This is the part of the United States that spent the most money subsidizing wind and solar. Hundreds of billions of dollars going into that, and yet when we need the power most, it's not it's not reliable. So it's not affordable. It's the most expensive electricity we have in America is offshore wind. So the future of that for right now under this administration, there is not a future for that, for offshore wind, because it's too expensive and not reliable enough. We are taking a deep look. There are 5 projects that are under construction. We're taking a look at each of those. But I would say, again, you're asking a question about investor confidence. I think investors should say, if you want to invest in energy in America, we're looking for all kinds of investment dollars. We're trying to provide long-term stability. We've talked about it here. How do we create stability for 20-year, natural gas, offtake contracts? We want stability when we've got reliable, affordable energy. Chris, anything you want to add to that?
Nothing to add to that.
All right, with that, we'll go to the next question here.
Mitchell Furman with Bloomberg. Secretary Wright, what do you say to your former oil industry, shale industry colleagues who are not quite happy about the lower prices these days that the administration's pushing for?
Yeah, look, the administration came in an agenda to unleash American energy, meaning making it easier to produce more, reduce the regulatory uncertainty, reduce the onerous burdens, the inability to build infrastructure. So I think the marketplace has clearly got the signal that American energy production is going to grow faster than it otherwise would have. And if you grow supply, you push prices down. But it's a marketplace. We're also lowering the cost for oil and gas companies to produce oil, and we're going to continue to do things that are going to lower their break-even cost. Look, it's a dynamic industry that's always innovating, and of course, prices are cyclical. But I'm very bullish on the future for the American oil industry, American natural gas industry.
I just want to jump in and add to that, because when Chris talks about that, I mean, we think that just through the regulatory changes we've already made, we could be shaving off 10% of the cost of developing oil or gas, onshore in America. Offshore, I've been able, through the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management reports to Interior, we've been able to make small regulatory changes that we literally know are going to save billions of dollars of cost from the industry around the commingling of sources on a given well. So there's some of these things that they don't require a law from Congress. We're just rolling back the egregious overregulation that was intended to drive costs up on development and to try to force fossil fuels out of the market. Of course, that didn't work. Chris gave the numbers, but then also the innovation that's coming. I mean, the whole, as Chris has talked about, 20 years ago, the U.S. was importing natural gas. Now, 106 BCF. We're the largest, producer and exporter in the world. In my home state of North Dakota, in the last year, I was governor last year, the typical Bakken field well was 2 miles down and 2 miles over. In the last year, 75% of the permits were 3-mile laterals. This is what other industry created a 50% increase in productive shale performance out of the same 3-acre well pad. They're going 3 acres going down 3 miles. I mean, the productivity gains that still can remain for this industry to drive their break-even point down is really remarkable.
Let me add one other piece of color. President Biden, I'm sure you saw in 2019 when he ran for president at campaign rallies, he said, "I guarantee you I will end hydrocarbons. I guarantee I will end them." When he came into office, 82% of American primary energy came from hydrocarbons, and when he left, 82% of American primary energy came from hydrocarbons. That was his success in ending hydrocarbons. But what he did was make it harder to produce them. So when you make them harder to produce, you make them more expensive. It actually raised the profitability of the industry. When I was in the industry, I said, thanks. You're making 1% of Americans richer and 99% of Americans poorer. And so Secretary Burgum and I are working together to reverse all that stuff, make it cheaper and easier to produce energy. And of course, that's going to drive down the price.
Yeah, thanks. Kalina Roshakov, Neue Zürcher Zeitung, German-speaking paper. Just to come back to to the future of the U.S., so you made clear that you don't see a future in solar, wind, and batteries to fuel the prosperity of the American people. On the other hand, your arch rival, China, seems to very much think that the future lies in these technologies. Doesn't that make you worry?
Let me jump into that. Number one, we don't make it clear that we don't believe in wind, solar, or batteries. We want to end the subsidies for them. So solar will continue to grow in the United States. Wind without subsidies, I don't know, but we will see. Well, one of the other problems is wind takes 1,000 times more land to produce an equivalent amount of energy. And that, of course, that amount of energy is less valuable because you don't know when it's going to be there, but it takes a lot of land. So across our country, opposition to wind has become quite large. Opposition to solar is growing too, but it's not as bad as opposition to wind. We want solar to compete on its own in the marketplace. It has a future. We definitely want batteries and energy storage to get better. In fact, the Department of Energy is investing in and partnering with multiple companies and multiple technologies there. So we're not walking away from them. We're just stopping the subsidization of them and any other specialized treatment. Hasn't been a great investment so far, but we're all about improvement. And China is doing something. China's just doing everything. The biggest expansion in electric generating capacity in China is coal. There are also huge expansion in nuclear, huge expansion in wind and solar, but total energy in China, wind and solar and batteries is also quite small. They have a different benefit from them that we don't and that the European Union doesn't, in that they have huge businesses exporting it. They're over 70% of the global solar supply chain. So it's big manufacturing industry for them. And of course, they use their coal-powered industry and an unfortunate amount of slave labor in Xinjiang to produce massive amounts of solar panels.
I would add to that a couple of things. When Chris spoke at the beginning, he talked about, affordable, reliable, and secure. One of the things that we know, just like during the first Trump administration, there was a discovery that the Huawei telecommunications equipment had the ability for the Chinese government of China to do surveillance, if we installed that all over the United States. In the same way, then again, it's been publicly reported. Analysis, you've all, I'm sure, aware of it, but some of the solar panels that were being sold in the United States had essentially software kill switches in them. So again, if there's going to be a future for solar in America, it's got to be made either by us or our allies, because we're not in a position where we can have a trusted supply chain around that. The other reason why China's going all in on solar is because they're the largest importer of hydrocarbons in the world. 11.5 million barrels of oil a day flow into China. And so, of course, they're in a position where they have a different set of reasons to want to reduce. For them, it means energy security, for them to be doing that. For people that are buying their panels, it may be energy insecurity. It's the opposite. It's the same source of energy, but depending on what side of that equation you're on, it could either be a plus or a minus. For the U.S., it was a minus.
Here, Fernando Heredia from Forbes magazine, Argentina. The U.S. government is a great ally for President Milei in Argentina. The thing is, last Sunday, Milei suffered a great defeat in midterm elections that is hitting the economy, and so the possibility of developing oil and gas that was one of the biggest plans of the administration. So the question is if the U.S. government is worried about that situation and if it's planning to support Argentina in some way.
Well, we know that there's a great personal relationship between the President of the United States and the President of Argentina. And I know that we've met with companies here during this conference that we're very excited about the potential for investing in Argentina around that oil and gas. I think that Chris and I, we're pro-energy, we're pro-affordable energy. We know that it's great for human flourishing. And so anytime we see a country moving away from responsible development of affordable, reliable, and secure sources, that's disappointing for us. We think that the world is actually, and maybe this is a setback in this midterm election, but I think economics is like water. Water flows downhill. You can't change it. Economics in the end win. They can win over. It wins over regulation. It wins over a lot of forces against it. But I think the economics are so powerful around having affordable, reliable energy from these other sources that we're talking about, and whether that's down the road from nuclear, from hydro, from geothermal, from fossil fuels, all of these things, and clean fossil fuels, clean coal, clean oil and gas, all the innovation that can occur. I think people are going to realize that the cost of pursuing in trillions of dollars. Chris has got the numbers, and we've spent $5 trillion as a planet pursuing the wind, solar, battery approach, and it has not benefited. It's just raised the cost of prices for everyone. And again, I want to make the point. People say, yeah, but we might be saving the planet from 1 degree of climate change in the year 2100. What's going to save the planet is winning the AI arms race. We need power to do that, and we need it right now. We need to worry about the humans that are on the planet today. Yes, I'm worried about the future. I've got kids. I'm worried about the next generation. But that's all solvable. The real existential threat right now is not a degree of climate change. It's the fact that we could lose the AI arms race if we don't have enough power. And so, again, pro-energy countries are going to attract capital. They're going to attract jobs. They're going to have high GDP growth. Those that pursue energy poverty through regulation and high costs are going to not attract capital. And the capital flows right now, again, back to the point, electricity is worth more now than it ever has been. The amount of capital flows in the next 2 years are going to be record amounts, and they will absolutely not go to places where the electricity prices are 2, 3, and 4 times higher than other places on the planet. So that's the future. It's going to happen. It's unstoppable in terms of the economic flows. And so people can make choices as a country, just like you can make a choice as a state in America to have policies that drive energy costs up, but you will be making a choice of missing out on this next wave of innovation, the next wave of investment, which will lift everybody up.
Yeah, no comment on Argentine politics, but we do embrace Malay's freedom agenda. Absolutely. We want to see that go forward. Unleash the Argentine people.
Hello, Fausta Chiesa from Corriere della Sera, Italian daily newspaper. The US have put sanctions on oil and gas from Russia and have asked the European Union to phase out from Russian gas. And you have become the first supplier of European Union. What about the nuclear fuels? The US still imports uranium and nuclear fuels from Russia. Are you going to put an embargo also on that?
We have, in fact. You know, we have a congressional law that does not allow us to import Russian uranium after 2028. And I know same issue here in the EU. Both of us import nuclear fuel from Russia. We don't like that. We're actually further behind the EU. But from my department, we are going to be announcing multiple awards trying to re-stand up the nuclear supply chain in the United States. And one of the areas is enrichment. We need to massively grow the enriched uranium in the United States together with our allies here in Europe and get off of Russian enriched uranium. But that takes time, unfortunately. We are keenly focused on it. And of course, Russian uranium comes through other avenues and all that. They're trying to get around these sanctions. But it may still be 2 or 3 more years, but we will cease it. Thank you for the question.
Hi, Alina Trabatoni. I'm from Montel News. I had 2 quick questions. One was, what are the plans? Are there any plans for sanctions on Chinese LNG imports? And also, how does the US plan to meet its energy supply commitment to Europe, the $750 billion commitment? And what impact do you foresee it could have on energy prices and supply security for Europe? In that, you know, are there any US energy policy shifts that could be in the pipeline? Tariffs, supply restrictions, anything like that, you know, markets should be aware of?
So great question. I'll take the second question first. Doug may want to take the first one. But regarding that, you know, in this treaty, this increased U.S. energy exports to the EU, we think that's in the best interest of both countries. But I think it's a legitimate question. Boy, if we're going to increase by 70 or 80% our LNG exports to Europe, is that going to drive up the price? And I think the answer is history says absolutely not. 20 years ago, the United States was a net importer of natural gas. We produced only half what we produce today, and natural gas prices were over twice as expensive as they are today. So what the shale revolution brought was an explosion in gas production and a decline in prices. 15 years ago, 20 years ago, we had over 1,000 rigs drilling for natural gas, and we were the largest importer in the world. Today we have 110, almost a 90% reduction in the number of rigs drilling for natural gas in the United States. We've doubled our production, become the world's largest exporter, and halved the price. So for us to increase exports to the EU and double U.S. LNG exports, we need to add about another 15 or 20 rigs. We have hundreds of extra rigs. So it's hard to overstate the scale of United States shale gas production. And as we ramp it up in volume, it actually has been a cost efficiency thing. Our hope is to see a long-term decline in the price of natural gas, not just in the US, but in the EU and elsewhere. I'm pretty confident we can do that.
The other piece I'd add to that is not only have the supply, but we've also, from an export capacity, one of the things that the Department of Energy and the Trump administration as a whole have done is we've permitted a record amount of export facilities. These, of course, were paused completely by the Biden administration. Literally almost on the first day that President Trump took office, it was announced we're going 180-degree direction, and there are a number of American companies here. They've got projects underway. These are 16, 18, $20 billion projects each. I think we've got 5 that have been approved. We've got expansions that have been approved. So our export capacity, all of this happening off the Gulf Coast. But the other piece that is, because these are global markets, the only infrastructure project that President Trump talked about during his State of the State address earlier this year was the Alaska LNG pipeline. This is an opportunity to tap into an enormous resource that we have in Alaska. In the prior administration, again, in their effort to shut off fossil fuels, there were 68 executive orders by the Biden administration trying to shut down Alaska energy production. I mean, it was amazing. The Biden administration actually sanctioned the state of Alaska more than Iran. And so we have completely reversed that. Part of unleashing American energy is unleashing Alaska. It's 8 days by boat from southern Alaska, from Anchorage to Tokyo. So you could cut transportation costs by 1/3. And then you've also got the security premium because you'd be traveling along the Aleutian Islands. And of course, all of our Pacific allies we're in discussions with, from Taiwan, the Republic of Korea, the Philippines, Vietnam, Japan. There was a signing that Chris and I went to today between JIRA and U.S. companies about a long-term commitment to the LNG. We were at a signing yesterday, in terms of, again, additional contracts flowing here to the EU, from U.S. companies. So we know that this fulfillment with the potential is there. And of course, that $250 billion a year is not just LNG, it's all energy sources. So part of the reason Chris and I are here to expand those conversations and make sure that we can, again, because the more energy we can sell to our friends and allies, again, better prosperity for all, more peace in the world.
Last comment. So I'm very comfortable the U.S. can expand our capacity to deliver much more products. One of the other reasons we're here is to work on the barriers within the European Union. There's methane regulations and a CS-DDD regulation. There's a number of sort of non-tariff barriers that I think are problematic for growing energy into Europe. Wouldn't be good for America, wouldn't be good for Europe. I go to Brussels tomorrow. We want to engage in those dialogues and not have barriers needlessly in the way of bringing more energy into Europe.
Thank you all so much. We do have to run, but we appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll end with saying, look, President Trump, as Secretary Burgum and I said, President Trump, his single greatest goals, prosperity in America and peace abroad. So he is looking at every avenue. How can we bring the Russia-Ukraine war to an end? I know all our allies in Europe want the same thing. He's a tremendous negotiator and he's creative. So he's looking at every possible avenue to get that war to end without overly large disruption. So I won't elaborate any more about what's coming next, but 7 days a week, he's thinking and bouncing ideas about how do we bring the leverage to end that war.
Thank you all. Thank you. We do have to run.
No,